There is a quiet certainty that accompanies us from our very first breath. One day, we will leave. Maybe you've never taken the time to truly think about it. Maybe you've even tried to push the thought away whenever it crept in, like someone closing a window before the cold wind can get in, and in a way, that's understandable. We live in a society that has learned to hide death. It's treated as a glitch in the system, an accident of existence, something to be avoided, denied, postponed. But what if death isn't the opposite of life? What if, in truth, it's part of it? Throughout the centuries, we've tried to tame this fear. We invented distractions, amassed possessions, chased promises of eternal happiness, all to avoid remembering that we are, above all, impermanent. Yet no matter how fast we run, the truth remains, patiently watching us. Life has an end, at least life as we know it, in this body, in this time, in this place. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what makes it so precious. Imagine for a moment if death didn't exist. If everything lasted forever, mornings would lose their magic, hugs would lack urgency, and perhaps our gatherings would no longer feel so meaningful. It's the awareness of the end that gives meaning to the now. So I invite you to stay here with me, just for a few minutes, without resistance, without fear, simply making space for us to reflect together. What can death, this old acquaintance we pretend not to see, teach us about living? This isn't an invitation to speak of sadness or loss. It's an invitation to speak of presence, of love, and of legacy. Because maybe, deep down, understanding death is one of the most profound ways to truly understand what life is. Why are we so afraid of death? If reflecting on death brings us closer to life, then why are we so afraid of it? The truth is, the fear of death doesn't come only from our biology, from that natural instinct for self-preservation. It's also, and perhaps primarily, the result of cultural, historical, and social conditioning. We live in a society that has learned to hide the end. Over the centuries, especially in Western cultures, death has been pushed out of our sight, our conversations, our rituals. It was tucked away into hospitals, outsourced, silenced, treated as something almost shameful, dirty, inconvenient. In ancient times, people died at home, surrounded by family, by familiar hands, by eyes that witnessed that final breath with love, respect, and presence. Dying was part of everyday life. Children grew up understanding that death was just as natural as birth, growth, and blooming. But today that's no longer the case. Dying has become invisible, and what isn't seen isn't understood, and what isn't understood breeds fear. On top of that, we live in a culture that glorifies youth, productivity, and performance. Talking about death almost feels like a challenge to this fabricated ideal of eternity. One we chase through surgeries, filters, promises of longevity, accumulation, and constant distractions. We deny aging. We deny the cycles. We deny everything that reminds us of our finiteness. And the more we deny it, the more afraid we become. What's curious, though, is that this fear doesn't go away in silence. On the contrary, it seeps through the cracks of our minds. It shows up in anxiety attacks, in existential emptiness, in unnamed anguish. Silence doesn't protect us. Silence makes us sick. But what if, instead of denying it, we learn to look at it, not like someone facing punishment, but like someone observing a teacher? Because maybe, just maybe, death was never the enemy. Maybe it's a teacher, one that insists on reminding us that time is sacred, that life is now, and that we're not here by accident. And the reflection flows naturally from here. What if we looked at how other cultures and traditions have learned to relate to this mystery? If the fear of death is, to a large extent, a cultural construct, could there be other ways to relate to it? The answer is yes. And maybe it's here that we begin to realize it hasn't always been this way. Not everywhere, not in every time. In many cultures, death is not seen as an enemy, nor as an absolute end. It is part of a cycle. as natural as birth, growth, and aging. Take, for example, indigenous peoples from various parts of the world. For them, death is not separate from life. It is part of the great cycle of nature. Just like a tree that fulfills its time, falls, and returns to nourish the earth, a person's life also returns to the community, the land, the ancestors. Death doesn't break, it transforms. Looking to Mexico, we find one of the most beautiful expressions of this relationship, Dia de los Muertos, a day not of sorrow, but of celebration. Families gather, build colorful altars, prepare the favorite foods of those who have passed, light candles, place flowers and photographs. In this way, the dead are remembered, honored, and symbolically invited to return and share in the moment. Because for them, a person only truly dies when they are forgotten. In the East, Buddhist and Hindu traditions offer an even broader perspective. In many branches of Buddhism, death is simply a transition, a return within the cycle of existence. Just as the seasons change, just as the moon waxes and wanes, so too does life. It doesn't end, it transforms. In these traditions, meditating on death isn't morbid, quite the opposite. It's a spiritual practice, a path to awareness. Because the one who remembers they will die learns how to live better. Among some African peoples, ancestry holds a central role. To die does not mean to disappear. It means becoming part of the lineage that sustains the living. The departed becomes a guide, a source of strength and wisdom. Life and death walk hand in hand, intertwined. All of this leads us to a question that may be uncomfortable, but is deeply necessary. Is the problem really death? Or the way we've learned not to look at it? When we deny death, we also deny the cycles, impermanence, and the beauty of the fleeting. We miss the opportunity to understand that living well is not about ignoring the end, but embracing it, accepting it, and allowing it to give meaning to the journey. And perhaps that is death's greatest teaching, to remind us that life was never about lasting, but about transforming. And it is precisely here that the reflection naturally leads us to the most essential question of all. What does death want to teach us about life? If death is a teacher, then what is its greatest lesson? Perhaps it speaks to something we've forgotten amid the busyness, the productivity, and the promises of eternity that society keeps selling us. Death reminds us that we are made of time, and time doesn't come back. It whispers to us, sometimes gently, sometimes abruptly, that life is not a rehearsal. There's no second season. There's no guaranteed later. And because of that, every morning, every hug, every word, every choice carries a value that can't be postponed. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But it's not. Because we are masters at postponing. Postponing the I love you, postponing that old dream, postponing reconciliation, postponing care for what truly matters. We live as if we were eternal. And paradoxically, it is precisely this forgetting of death that often prevents us from truly living. Death teaches us about presence, about urgency, not the anxious kind that overwhelms us, but a loving urgency that invites us to be here, to choose, to live with intention. It teaches us about letting go, about the impermanence of everything, and in that letting go, there is a kind of freedom that few ever experience. The understanding that nothing, absolutely nothing, truly belongs to us. Not things, not people, not even our own bodies. Everything is only lent to us for a time. And when we look at life through that lens, something deep within us shifts. Priorities rearrange themselves. What once felt urgent, deadlines, demands, hollow goals, begins to lose its grip. And what we often left for later, our relationships, our connections, the simple moments, begins to take center stage. Death also teaches us humility. It levels the playing field. It doesn't matter how much money you have, your status, or your appearance. In the face of death, we are all just human, part of a cycle far greater than our understanding can grasp. And perhaps the most beautiful lesson it gives us is about love. Because in the end, what truly remains when someone is gone? What's left is not their possessions, titles, or achievements. What remains are the gestures, the memories, the invisible marks we leave on the hearts of others. Death asks us quietly every day, even if we don't hear it, if you were to leave today, what would remain of you in the world? This question isn't an invitation to fear. It's an invitation to awareness, to understand that living well doesn't mean living long or living perfectly. It means living fully, presently, open to the life that is unfolding here and now. Interestingly, many people who've had near-death experiences say the same thing, that in that moment, what ran through their minds wasn't wealth or status or daily concerns. What came up was, did I love enough? Was I loved? Did I make a difference in someone's life? And perhaps right there is where death's greatest lesson is fully revealed. Life gains meaning when we understand it has an end. And it is precisely that ending that makes it so precious. When we look at death not as an enemy, but as a silent advisor, we begin to live differently. We start to value connection more deeply, to care better for the ones we love, to let go of arrogance, and to detach from what is small. Death teaches us that everything passes, everything changes, but there is something that remains, what we manage to plant in the hearts of others, the love we offer, the listening we give, the care we share. And maybe from this perspective, we can live not running from death, but walking alongside it, hand in hand with the awareness of our finitude, not as a burden, but as a lantern that lights the way to what truly matters. Legacy. What remains when we're gone? If life is brief and death is certain, then a question arises, one that transcends generations, cultures, and philosophies. What remains of us when we're gone? Interestingly, when we talk about legacy, many people automatically think of grand achievements, monumental works, historic milestones, fame, success. But the truth is, legacy doesn't live in headlines or on plaques of recognition. It lives in the invisible. Legacy is what we leave in others, in the memories we build, in the love we nurture, in the seeds we plant, often without even realizing it. That's what stays. And that, in the end, is what we all leave behind. Legacy isn't built only through big acts. It is shaped, above all, in daily choices. It's in how you treat people, in how present you are in your relationships, in your ability to listen, to support, to care. And here's an important truth. Everyone leaves a legacy. The question isn't if we'll leave one, it's what kind of legacy we'll leave. The problem is, we often spend so much time trying to meet external expectations, being successful, accumulating, winning, that we forget to ask ourselves what I'm building. Does it have real value? Does it leave a mark on the world? Does it make a difference in someone's life? When we look at life through the lens of finitude, we begin to see that true legacies are made of simple yet deeply powerful things. The time we give to our children, the comfort we offer friends in hard times, the unhurried hug, words that heal, unexpected kindness, a smile given to a stranger, the courage to forgive, the ability to love, even knowing everything is temporary. Legacy is also what we inspire in others. When someone looks at your life, and even after you're gone, continues to live out the values you embodied. It's when your way of loving, of being honest, kind, and present still echoes, even if your body is no longer here. And that, perhaps, is the truest form of eternity. An eternity that doesn't lie in the length of life, but in the quality of the marks we leave on people and on the world. Death, then, instead of being seen as an erasure, can be understood as a transition, a passing point between what was lived and what continues in others. And when we become aware of this, life rearranges itself. The question is no longer, how much time do I have left? It becomes, What am I doing with the time I've been given? And in a way that feels almost magical, we begin to see that living well isn't about having control or eliminating uncertainty. It's about showing up fully in the present. It's about living in a way that when the end comes, as it will for all of us, we can look back with serenity and say, I lived, I loved, and I left something good behind. And so, by understanding that we are made of time and legacy, a new perspective naturally arises. A perspective that transforms the fear of death into deep gratitude for life. Life in the light of death, living with more awareness and presence. When we stop running from death and begin to face it with honesty, something profound happens. Life reveals itself with an intensity we may have never experienced before. Suddenly, the simplest things, once routine, ordinary, almost invisible, begin to shine differently. The smell of coffee in the morning, the sunlight streaming through the window, the laughter of someone you love, the touch of a hand, a shared glance, a moment of silence. All of it, seen through the lens of finitude, becomes a miracle. Living in the light of death doesn't mean living in sadness or fear. On the contrary, it means living awake, present, whole. It also means having the courage to make choices that are more aligned with what truly matters. Maybe that means simplifying, saying no more often to what doesn't make sense, and saying yes more to what nourishes, expands, and connects you. It also means letting go, at least a little, of the obsession with control. Because death, in reminding us of how powerless we are over time, invites us to make peace with impermanence. And paradoxically, the more we accept that we don't have control over everything, the more freedom we feel to fully live what's right here, right now, within reach. Living in the light of death is a daily invitation to presence, to really be where we are, not on autopilot, not lost in constant distraction, but with the fullness of someone who understands that each moment is unique and therefore sacred. You may have heard someone with a serious diagnosis say, "After I found out, I started truly living." Why is it that, so often, it takes facing the real possibility of the end before we begin to truly value what has always been here? And the inevitable question arises, do we really need to wait for a loss, an illness, a scare before we start living this way? Maybe not. Maybe the simple act of reflecting on mortality, as we're doing right now, is enough to begin that transformation. A transformation that isn't about doing more, achieving more, or accumulating more, but rather about being more, feeling more, loving more, and at the same time becoming less attached to what is fleeting, to what doesn't truly matter. When we recognize that we are just passing through, what matters isn't how fast we go or how many places we visit. What matters is the quality of the journey. And it's beautiful to realize that deep down, this has always been the greatest gift that the awareness of death offers us, to remind us every single day that being alive is in itself a miracle. Death as part of life, an invitation to awareness and love. In the end, perhaps death was never an enemy. It has always been here, silent, like a guardian of what truly matters. It doesn't come to steal meaning, but to offer us perspective, to remind us that time is our most precious gift, that life cannot be postponed, that love cannot be left for later. By embracing death as part of life, we come to understand that we weren't born to accumulate things, to win some imaginary race, or to chase an unreachable perfection. We came here to live, to experience, to touch and be touched, to love and be loved. And interestingly, it's precisely by making peace with death that we become more alive, more present, more open to what truly matters. So may this reflection be more than just a conversation about the end. Let it be an invitation to live more consciously, more lovingly, more truthfully. May we, each day, remember what death, in its quiet wisdom, is always trying to tell us. The time is now. Love is now. Life is now. And when at last our time comes to leave this world, as it will for all of us, may we look back not with regret, but with gratitude. Gratitude for having lived with wholeness, with presence, with love. Because in the end, that is the true meaning of being alive.